Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the King, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be ranking all of Dead by Daylight DLC chapters from worst to best. A couple of disclaimers before I jump on in. Every time we make these tier lists, I need to specify. First of all, this is all just my opinion. You're free to disagree with me. Again, this one isn't as crazy as tier list of who's the strongest killer. This is just my opinion on what's the best chapter. And disclaimer number 2, all credit goes to these chapters. There's just a little margin that separates the bottom from the best. All of these chapters were well done. I'm just giving my opinion on which one I think I have the most fun with and which one not so much. And that's all we're going to be ranking these on. The way they look aesthetically, the way the maps look, the way the character resonates with people, and not really focus on the gameplay aspect of things, but just what they brought to the table, what they've done to the game, and how impactful the chapter was. Let's jump on in to the best and the worst DLCs in the game. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. The worst DLC, in my opinion, is the Ghostface DLC. Now, before you get your pitchforks ready, the reason why this one is the worst is because it's only a paragraph, and I had to include the paragraphs in this because they did bring about a new killer, so I still technically count them as a chapter. And the reason why Ghostface is literally last on the board is not because Ghostface is a bad character or lore-wise or anything like that. It's just because he didn't come with a survivor or a map, and when stacked up against the other chapters, he falls short because of that reason. Besides that, there's literally nothing I have against Ghostface or his lore. It would be a little more iconic if we actually got Ghostface in the lore-wise and not just a person in the mask, but I can't complain. We still got Ghostface and I'm happy about it. So moving on to the next one, coming in at number 13 on the list is Leatherface. And the same story can be written for Leatherface as he is a paragraph. We don't have a survivor for him, and because of this, he falls short. However, we did get a map with him. This was a variation to the swamp map, hence why he's above Ghostface. Again, nothing to take away from Leatherface. Absolutely amazing. The way he looks, the way he grunts, everything about it, having the chainsaw revving up, it's just very iconic, having such an OG killer coming on into the game. Now we're going to dip into the chapters that have a map, have a survivor, and have a killer. And the first one on our list is Demise of the Faithful. Now this one is ranked low for me because we received this map, but this was a map variation. While the temple looks absolutely amazing, with map variations, they kind of throw me off a little bit, and I'm not fully into like, oh yeah, this is a brand new map. It still feels in a way like the original map, like we've received it before. Obviously it's new, but just being in the same realm and another variation doesn't really give me that same feeling. As for the Plague, she looks absolutely amazing, but she just doesn't give me that feel where I'm like, wow, look at this. And as for Jane, she's probably one of the best things about this DLC. I know a lot of players love Jane. She is a very unique character. We haven't seen any characters like her before. Her backstory and lore is amazing as well. And speaking of lore, I do need to touch on the Plague's lore. It was pretty good too, having this religious figure coming on into the game. So applause to Dead by Daylight for doing that, but sadly for me, it's going to be a little bit low on my list. Moving on, we have the Darkness Among Us DLC. Now, at first glance, I thought that this was a huge missed opportunity for them with the Legion. When we first saw the teaser for the Legion, we were like, okay, this killer is going to switch in between people. They're all going to have different powers. We even made a fan-made chapter on that, but sadly, we did not receive that. As for Jeff, a few people play him. A lot of people know Jeff is there in the back of their mind. He's a very tall survivor. He's very manly. He looks like Jesus. He's pretty cool, but a lot of people really don't play him. He doesn't resonate with the players as much. As for the map, phenomenal. We have our first real taste of a snowy map. Obviously, we had it before in the Treatment Fader, but we were more focused indoors than outdoors. And because it is, playing on this map just felt really, really good. It was like a Wonderland kind of map. So not bad, but still when it comes down to it, the Legion and Jeff really doesn't stick with the player that much, and for that reason, it is low on my list. Moving on, we have the Curtain Call DLC. Now, the Curtain Call DLC, again, is ranked low for the same reason why Demise of the Faithful was ranked low. and it's because it has a good survivor, it has a mediocre killer with the clown. You know, he's pretty interesting, he throws bottles at you, but that's the full extent of it. And then we have a map variation, which in all fairness is completely different from the asylum, as it's a carnival, but still with the same tiles, the same atmosphere. It does take away from it a little bit, but the chapter was well made. Kate has stuck with players to this day. There's so much Kate mains out there, and the clown is pretty interesting too, who arguably has some of the best cosmetics in the game, so it is ranked higher than the other chapters. Moving on, we have Flesh and Mud, introducing the Hag and Ace and the Backwater Swamp. Now, at first glance, when we first played this is what a horror game was all about. You run around, and then boom, the Hag pops up, tilts your camera, you look at her, you get jump scared, your character screams as well. This is what a horror game needed, and this was one of the really good chapters. Ace kind of brings it down a little bit, as I know I wasn't going to talk about any gameplay, but his perks don't really do much, as luck isn't a big factor in the game, so a lot of people just didn't play him. In addition to that, while he did had some cool cosmetics, it just wasn't enough to bring the people. The map, however, looks amazing. Having a swampy map is very interesting, very nice, something we haven't seen before in the game, and for that reason it's ranked higher. Now, let's move on to the better end of the chapters. We've gotten the first 5 out the way, I believe, or 6. We got the first 6 out the way, so let's go ahead and talk about the rest. This is where things really step up and start doing really, really good. And next on the list is the Last Breath chapter, introducing Nurse, Nia, and the Asylum. Mwah. A beautiful chapter, their first ever chapter as well, and they hit it out the park. Putting in a nurse that can do something that we've never seen any killers do before was just insane. Nia coming on in with this kind of rebel girl really stuck with the players, and so many players now play Nia as well. The map looked absolutely amazing. It was the first time we received an indoor and an outdoor map in one. Obviously, we had like other maps like the Cold Tower and things like that, but it wasn't as big and dynamic. Now we're seeing something where you could run inside and literally waste so much time, run outside, waste so much time, and it just was a great map all around. For the first shot at it, they did really, really well with it, but it does fall short in some areas as it is their first ever chapter, so we can excuse that. Let's move on the list. We now have the Saw chapter. How iconic is the Saw chapter coming on into Dead by Daylight? All of the licensings are really, really good for the game, and putting in the pig was amazing. Now, it is a shame that we did receive Detective Tap and not any other characters, but we can't complain. We still got someone that is amazing. Sadly, he doesn't have as much cosmetics as he's licensed, and I think that's kind of the main issue with a lot of these licensed chapters, as there's not a lot of cosmetics for them, so it's a little bit difficult for people to actually continuously play them, but hey, it still worked out in the end, as we did receive cosmetics for them. And the game map was introduced, our first 2-story map. You had the upstairs and the downstairs, you had a pigvac room, very iconic, and it just looked good, it felt good. You even have people on Reddit making Boop the Snoop foundations and all these things, so very, very interesting, a very well made chapter. Let's move on to the final chapter before we get on into our top 5, and that is A Lullaby for the Dark. This was a free DLC which introduced the Huntress, David King, and Mother's Dwelling. And my god, was this an amazing chapter. Our first projectile killer, having someone like the Huntress with such an amazing backstory. David King coming on in as well as this badass kind of guy. The first time we're seeing someone like this, shirtless as well. So everyone was like, wow, look at David. We also received a very rainy and dynamic Mother's Dwelling, having the middle cabin as well, the middle house. It was just well done. This chapter was great. Everybody loved the Huntress. Everybody loved David King. The map was just aesthetically pleasing. And the job well done. Next on the list is Spark of Madness. And recently, this map got a rework, and it really set the tone of what a horror game map should look like. The Doctor also came in with this DLC, putting more fright by shocking you with his eyes just sticking out as well. Just looks very, very evil. And then Feng Ming How can we forget about her? Absolutely amazing. Everybody loves her. She has this very sweet charm to her and an amazing backstory to go along with it, so not too bad. Nightmare on Elm Street. Having someone such as Freddy Krueger coming onto the game was so beneficial to Dead by Daylight. Quentin Smith also coming on in, and Bad Ham Preschool having this first instance of going into dream mode and the entire map changes was just amazing. And this doesn't only work on this map, specifically works on every single map, so a job well done to the devs on that one. Now sadly for these characters, we don't have any cosmetics, but the chapter itself is so good with a very beautiful killer. It took them a while to rework them. As I said, I won't talk too much about the gameplay, but it definitely helps now that he's one of the best killers in the game. And they also reworked the map, so, you know, not as bad as it used to be. As for Quentin, they even messed around with saying that his face could be fixed, so this chapter is ranked pretty high. Now we're into the top 4, and starting in number 4 is Hearst Legacy, the most recent chapter. Now, I had this one all the way at the top, but then I realized the only downside to this chapter is that it is a map variation, or else I would have it higher. And introducing the Oni, someone that goes into rage mode. He changes with fire. He has a different weapon. Oh, it's just so amazingly done. The map was absolutely amazing too, having a big centerpiece that has stairs leading up, just amazing. And let's not forget about Yui, this badass girl that rides bikes. Oh, amazing. She looks great, she sounds great, her cosmetics are great. Everything about this chapter was so well done, and I think this was one of their best original chapters to date, only beaten by what's next on the list, Shattered Bloodline, and that is with the Spirit, Adam Francis, and the original Family Resident map. And the reason why I have it up here is because just think about the Spirit, think about her lore, think about the way she looks. She is what a horror character should look like, and it was just so good. She has glass all over her. She's literally broken. It just looked absolutely amazing. And then the map was also great. This was the first instance of the Family Residence. You have the indoor and the outdoor theme as well, more Japanese orientated, so it was very, very good culture-wise. Then we had Adam Francis, who was the only kind of downside to this chapter. You know, a lot of people don't play him. You don't really have a lot of cosmetics for him, but I think the map and the Spare just bring this chapter up so much that it's number 3 on our list. And finally, we can move on to the top 2 chapters. Coming in at number 2 is the Halloween chapter, introducing Michael Myers, Laurie Strode, and Haddonfield. How iconic is this, especially for this being their second ever DLC? It just really gave Dead by Daylight that boost that it needed. Such an iconic killer, such an iconic survivor, Laurie Strode, and then the new Halloween movie coming out not too long ago. It was just great, and Lampkin Lane looked absolutely amazing. They really did a really good job with this, and it just really set the tone for things to come. And finally, the last chapter on the list, I'm sure you guys would have guessed it by now, Stranger Things. Stranger Things is no doubt the best chapter they've ever had when it comes down to the impact that it has on the game, the recognition that it gave to the game, and everything like that. Again, we're not focusing on gameplay, just about the things that Stranger Things chapter did. It was Netflix's record-breaking series, giving us 2 survivors, Nancy and Steve, who are so iconic in this day and age. The Demogorgon as well, our first taste of a killer that's not a human. Oh, the chapter was so well done. Custom chase music, the EGC Easter egg at the end of the map, just the way the map looks in general, and the general impact of putting in what is currently the biggest series on Netflix into a video game, and the amount of eyes that you got in the game. Stranger Things is no doubt the best thing to happen to Dead by Daylight. Now that is going to wrap up this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. It was a lot of fun making this. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me on my chapter selections, and tell me what you guys think. What's your favorite chapter? What's your least favorite chapter? I would love to hear. But that's gonna wrap it up for this video, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you leave a like down below. As always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.